somebody wrote asking for some help, so I thought that probably since other people have had the same kind of thing come up for them, that I would present it here. Okay, so this person said, I wondered if you might speak about something I am feeling very strongly. The new president is signing executive orders that harm the earth. He wants to block refugees from Muslim countries from seeking asylum, and I fear he will make good on what he said during the campaign and create a Muslim registry. When I see harm to sentient beings and to the earth, I want to physically intervene and stop it. How can I reconcile my Dharma practice with the increasing urge to physically battle what is happening, especially if we come to the point of rounding people up and creating registries? What is the correct response to these feelings? If they detain Muslims, I'm inclined to fight. This is obviously not the correct response, but what is? So I really respect that this person realizes that they have a tendency, a wish to act in an incorrect way, in a harmful way, and that they are fearless in admitting that. You know, if we have these kind of impulses, but we stuff them down and we don't seek help, then they can often grow. So I'm very glad that this person brought it out in the open and acknowledged, you know, this is not a good motivation. I don't want to have this. What can I do? Okay. So what I've noticed in the Lam Rim is that so often they talk about the advantages of one thing and the disadvantages of the other. Yeah, and it happens time and time again, you know, the advantages of relying on a spiritual mentor, the disadvantages of not, the advantages of contemplating death and impermanence, the disadvantages of not, the benefits of bodhicitta, the disadvantages of not contemplating emptiness. I mean, all the time this comes up in the teachings. And so clearly, what it's doing is using our reasoning function in our mind to really think, to pause and think about the effects of our actions. Yeah? And not let this urge to physical or violent intervention just take over our mind, but to pause and think, okay, you know, I want to be effective in what I'm doing, and what will be effective action. And clearly when you think about it, you know, violence or physical intervention in this kind of thing is not going to be effective for accomplishing even what you want to do in terms of changing policies. Yeah? Doing petitions, calling the Congress, you know, calling writing to the White House, joining a group who is opposing, who is supporting the kind of policies that you want. All of this is much more effective action. Yeah. Acting out physically, you know, it gets the physical energy gone, but then you're stuck with the result of what happened. And chances are that result will wind up with oneself getting arrested, in which case there's no way you're going to be able to benefit anybody at all. So to really think, you know, what are the disadvantages of the physically acting out? What are the benefits of really stopping and thinking about effective ways to act? You know, because there are effective ways to act. They may not be 100% successful. Yeah, but what is in samsara. Nothing is 100% successful. But if we can make some positive influence, then we should go ahead and do that. Yeah. So at the same time that I was thinking about this email, I got I was reading a letter from one of the inmates I write to, and he was telling me that at the prison where he was on New Year's Eve, and at 3 other prisons, I don't know if all these other prisons were in the same state or different states, but there were members of 2 gangs against members of one other gang retaliating for a murder. And so one guy in his prison got his neck lacerated, another one, was also physically injured. The whole prison's been on lockdown, meaning, people can't go out of their cells. They're just now being able to start, doing some of their other activities. And this happened in 3 other prisons as well. And it was apparently, he wrote, retaliation for a murder that happened 1.5 years ago. And, the guy I'm writing to, implicit in his words were actually how I was feeling too, which is, this is really sad because it doesn't do any good. All it does is some people got hurt. The people who were involved all got put in the hole. And then everybody in the whole prison is made miserable by being on lockdown. Both the staff and all the other inmates that weren't even involved in the violence. And so just stopping to think, that yes, we may have an urge towards physical violence, but that doesn't mean we need to carry it out. We need to look for other ways. And so, as I was saying, get more active in the community and join with other people and with organizations who are working in favor of the kind of policies that you believe in. Yeah. This same inmate, he wrote, he was saying that in one of my previous letters, I had said, we don't need to be afraid of our thoughts and emotions. We can observe them with mindfulness and understand them. And he responded to that part in my letter. He said, early on in my practice, when I struggled with thoughts of violence, I was fearful and too nervous to turn to the teachings of the Dharma. Yeah, so he had a lot of violent thoughts coming up in his mind. I remember him writing me about them at that time. And it was so hard to turn to the Dharma teachings because kind of turning to the teachings means admitting that you have a problem. It means looking at those thoughts and trying to do something with them. And I think he was just very afraid of being overwhelmed by those thoughts, and and to the point where it was hard for him to look at them. Yeah. But he says, once I switched to simply observing, breathing calmly, understanding what was happening, then and only then was I capable to reasonably reflect on the beautiful teachings of the Dharma. Okay? So, what it took for him was to slow down, because when we have this urge to be physically involved, there's a lot of adrenaline in our body, and then we can act under the influence of that adrenaline. So what he's saying is he was learning to slow down, and instead of acting, observe what's going on in his body, observe what his thoughts are, okay? Breathing calmly. this particular person is a big fan of breathing. He often writes to me about how he just uses breath, to calm himself. And then understanding what was happening. That's what he did. So instead of just, jumping and like, I gotta do something, it's again, well, what's happening here? And what is going to be a skillful way to deal with the situation? Instead of the emotional, okay, I'm going to jump in and take over and just get my energy out. Yeah. So he's made a lot of progress in that way. And he said when he was able to do that, then he could reasonably reflect on the Dharma teachings. And so then he started to reflect on, what are the disadvantages of these thoughts? What are the benefits? Well, there aren't any, So what are the benefits of other kinds of ways of thinking, and what are those other ways of thinking? And so he started to do that kind of analysis, and he's really made a lot of change over the years because of this. So I wanted to offer that to your ears in the hopes that it helps. So the same thing, some people have the urge to act out physically. Some people have the urge to act out verbally. It doesn't matter, but to stop and say, okay, what are the effects of my actions likely to be? And that's one of the biggest things. I think that's one of the biggest things that makes us a thoughtful person, is to really think, what are the consequences of my actions? And that makes us look at what is motivating my actions, because what is motivating them is going to be deeply involved in how they result. Yeah, and taking that time to just stop and contemplate. And even if we get carried away in the moment, at least later come back and stop and contemplate. Yeah. And if we do that enough, then slowly we'll get a handle on that surge of anger that comes up, and we'll be able to find other ways of dealing with it. And maybe get to the point where instead of anger coming up, compassion comes up. Yeah. And compassion is often the hardest thing to feel for somebody that we disagree with, because we've so much painted them into an enemy box that, to come anywhere near compassion, we say, well, I just feel sorry for them because they're so misguided. That's not compassion. That's contempt. Okay? But, to really look in somebody's heart and see what's going on, and to see that basically they're just like us, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. Yeah. In fact, earlier in this letter, he was telling me about one other, it was in a previous letter, he was telling me about one of his neighbors who's always doing this and that, and, and then here he says, when I thought about it, I do some of the same things that I was criticizing that guy for doing. Yeah. And so who am I to judge? And if I want to have acceptance and understanding for myself, then that has to go for the other person who's just like me. Yeah. And so we try and generate that. I just think of these gang wars, whether they're on the streets or in the prisons, and they're so totally useless, aren't they? Yeah. And it's sad because it's people who don't have another image of what they can become. Yeah, that how they grew up, they were deprived of seeing role models or whatever. They faced prejudice by society, whatever it was, that made it difficult for them to see that they had options in life and choices. And so much human potential gets wasted in that way, when we don't have a positive image of what we can grow towards. And then what are you left with? Defending your own ego and being proud. And that is the essence of all these gang things, It's like, you did some small thing to me, I gotta pay you back. And that kind of behavior is not limited to gangs. It's found all over society, actually. Yeah. Also, just as we stopped, one of the nuns recommended that we watch the movie Gandhi. And I think that's a really good idea, because when you see how he thought, then you get that inspiration that it's possible to make very profound change, even when you're dealing with somebody who is violent towards you. Do they have a movie like that about Martin Luther King? About Nelson Mandela? Yeah. So it's good to watch these kinds of things and see what other people did, how they channeled their caring. Because, what's behind all this urge to act out is caring that gets then polluted by anger. Yeah. But to see the example of people who care and how they can then act in effective ways. Yeah.
So apparently, according to the film, when Nelson Mandela got out of prison, they asked him, how did he survive? And then he said, by getting to know my jailers, by getting to be their friend, by learning their language, by really getting close to them and understanding their point of view. And so he came out of prison without any resentment or grudges or hatred toward the people who put him there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, very good. And also I remembered now something I wanted to say here too, because the person spoke about a registry for Muslims. And I remember reading a couple of months ago the man who is head of the Anti-Defamation League, a Jewish organization that is against prejudice, anti-Semitism specifically, but prejudice in general. And when he heard about the idea of making a Muslim registry, he said, if that happens, this proud Jew will register as a Muslim. And Gloria Steinem said something similar at the march. She said, if they make a registry, we'll all register as Muslims. Yeah, that would be really effective, wouldn't it?